as Claire Muldoon was just saying, to get out there and work and just have that. It's a mindset as much as anything else, right? And I think that's often what we're dealing with, a mindset. The idea of not going to work is no longer that controversial, really. It doesn't sort of seem to be that much of a problem. Claire Muldoon is with us. Let's move to this next story, Claire. Riots showing white working-class boys feel disenfranchised from society. This is the Shadow Security Minister. Well, this was Mel Stride that made this point. Yesterday, Shadow Security Minister Tom Tugendhat criticised the Prime Minister's handling of the riots, and another Tory, Mel Stride, is now pushing for more opportunities for white working-class men, often the lowest on the pecking order when it comes to some areas these days. Do we need to see change in society to stop something like this happening again? Let's have a listen, firstly, Claire, to what Tom Tugendhat said yesterday.
This has been the government's first real test, and the Prime Minister fell short. When we needed a strong government, we got a party in the mindset of opposition. We needed a leader. We got a lawyer waiting for the case to reach court. These are early days for the government, and government isn't easy, but government isn't a game either. It is more than press releases and retweets, and you can't be wise with hindsight, something Labour mastered in opposition. You have to be determined and aware throughout. You have to be ready to do the job from day one.
Well, that's a fair point. Whether he's doing the job from day one is another debate altogether. But this area, this idea of young, white, working-class boys feeling almost disenfranchised, Claire. Yeah.
Well, it's not new. We've known this for a good number of years. And I've always said, regardless of your race, creed or colour, what we should be concentrating on is economic depravity and poverty, because that transcends everything. And if the country was so lessened by the fact that we didn't need to deal with DEI and pushing certain segments of society further and above other people, we wouldn't have this disenfranchisement. The thing that cuts through it all is lack of money. And that's what has to be addressed. That's the parity here. Treat everybody under a certain threshold of wealth or money or whatever, and then deal with that, regardless of your sex, regardless of your colour, regardless of anything else, or where you are in the pecking order in life. Because what's happened is these young men are being fueled like the absolute disgusting cretins like Andrew and Tristan Tate. They seek to them to have an identity, and that's what's led to these riots. And these two brothers are telling young boys, oh, look, this is what you do. If she doesn't like it like that, that means you're not doing it. It's just pitting people against each other. And it's unfortunate that the broken families in this country, the single parents, which are inordinately single mothers trying to bring up young lads especially, is very difficult. And it's the breakdown. There's no strong male role models for boys to look up to either. I think we've demasculated them, and that completely and utterly.
It's a very good point when you talk about role models, because I think there probably are more for young black boys. I think there are probably more black role models than there are white models for white boys. Now, you could say, well, you know, I don't know, you know, a top flight footballer would be a role model. You know, my little boy is 10. He doesn't care whether a footballer is black, white, Hispanic or whatever. He'll look at them and go, they're great. But, of course, there is a point when you start to, you know, you might follow your own ethnicity. And I don't think, when I think of white, but who would white boys look up to in that respect? And I don't think and in education as well. I think it's that one group that, for a long time, people have thought, well, they're all right, you know, they're the white boys, they're fine, because white is privileged and boys are privileged, so therefore what could go wrong? Well, they've been neglected. That's what could go wrong.
Which is completely rubbish.
Correct.
Absolutely rubbish. So that needs to be addressed. And how do we do it? I don't know, because everyone keeps saying, you know, you've got to be colour blind. Well, I'm sorry, the country wasn't for a long time.
Indeed.
To the extent and the detriment of young white boys. especially those in the working classes.
Let's move to another vulnerable group, and this really did surprise me. Back in November 2016, a new nationwide campaign to report anything passengers saw as suspicious activity on public transport was rolled out, and you might recognise the saying. Have a listen.
This is a security message. If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to staff or text the British Transport Police on 61016. We'll sort it. See it, say it, sorted.
Now, when people hear that message, they often think of, a suspicious bag or a parcel or, a shady character walking around looking as if they're about to kick off. But actually, there's another issue here. Over a third of women have been subjected to sexual harassment or sexual offences whilst commuting by train or tube. And this is a huge increase, more than 50% in the last couple of years. What's going on?
I've actually witnessed in the past 3 weeks, I've witnessed 2 young women being approached by 2 young men, to the extent that there was two other passengers that I made eye contact with, so we knew that something was amiss. The young girl got off at the station that I got off at, and then this man followed her, and then between the 3 of us, we put her inside us, so going up the escalators, but he dashed up and blatantly said, "I'm normally quite shy, I wouldn't normally do this, but I think you're absolutely beautiful. Can I take you out?" Now, this wasn't like a scene from a movie. We all felt prickled by this.
Yeah.
And I think it's that element of risk. We knew something wasn't quite right. And the other one was in a bus. It was horrible. It was a 16-year-old girl. She came up, she sat next to me, and the guy sitting on the opposite side immediately honed in on her and started. The language was absolutely disgusting, to the extent that I leant over and I went, "Excuse me, she's not interested." I grabbed her hand and I went, "You're getting off here now." And
this was broad daylight. This was like in front of other passengers. The guy wasn't even perturbed that there were people around.
No, absolutely not at all. Within the last 3 weeks.
And
I am absolutely disgusted by it.
I find it. I mean, one of the girls that worked with us came into work the other day, and she saw a man, with his bits and pieces out, pleasuring himself on a train in, daytime hours. Not that it would have been okay if it was nighttime hours. And you think, really? Does that, we've got more information about taboos and what you don't do, what is acceptable. We've never had more information. Well, it's not even about the Me Too movement, it's about common decency.
No.
You think all of that stuff used to happen in the 1960s or 70s or even 80s. And yet here it is on the increase.
It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I really feel for these young women, because we're trying to empower, and tell women, you are in charge of your identity, you are in charge of your destiny, you can be safe.
Yeah.
And regardless of how they dress or how they look, it's men targeting young females. That's what it is. And that's what we all have to be actually on guard for, in order for us to help them and make sure it doesn't go any further. But see it, say it, sorted. That used to be, like you said, for a left.
If you see something that doesn't look right, that's not just about parcels and rucksacks. That's about, people with iffy behaviour as well. Claire, thank you as ever. Claire Muldoon, the writer and broadcaster with us on the programme.